Hey everybody in Computer Science Principles. Welcome to Unit 7, Parameters, Returns, and Libraries. This is just an overview of the lessons that we're going to be doing in this unit. We're going to follow that explore, investigate, practice, make pattern that we know so well when we're learning new coding. Excuse me, we're going to learn parameters and return together in one series of lessons, in lessons 1 through 4. Then we'll take a look at libraries, and this will culminate in a project that is based on libraries, all right? So let's take a look at lesson 1. So lesson 1 is going to be an introduction to parameters and returns. So this unit 7 is our final unit that's based on new programming concepts in JavaScript before we get to actually preparing for and completing the big performance task that'll be submitted to me and to College Board, which we'll tackle in Unit 8. But first, let's just kind of think about what parameters and return are. So we're going to do this similarly to how we have in the past, where we're just going to kind of think about the concepts here before we actually get to the code, which we'll really do in lesson 2. So I want you to imagine that this blue rectangle here is the outside of an envelope. And this envelope represents a function, and the function is called make cake. But these directions, which we'll get to in a second, are going to be so general that it could work for any number of tiers and for any flavor cake. So if we want to call the function make cake, we have to decide how many tiers and what flavor we want. So before we look at what's inside the envelope, let's just decide what tiers and what flavor we want. So we are going to go with 3 tiers and the lemon flavor. And so that is actually going to be going on our envelope to cover up the names that were there. So we have 3 layers and lemon flavor. So now we're going to go ahead and turn around the envelope and take a look at what's inside, the actual instructions. And if we were in person right now, I would be kind of showing you actual envelopes. We'd see this on actual paper, but we're just going to have to imagine it. So let's take a look at what's inside. We have instructions for baking a cake. Once again, we have the name of our function, make cake, tiers, flavor. And then we have a series of instructions, and this is going to be in what we call pseudocode. It's not actual JavaScript. It's not actually going to be understood by a computer, but it is understood by us, and it's in computer programming context. So you can see it says repeat tiers times, bake a flavor cake, ice the cake, and then assemble tiers layers into one cake and put it in a box. That's our directions. And the first thing that we're going to do is remember that we said we want 3 layers or tiers and lemon flavor. So anytime that the directions referenced tiers or flavor, we're going to replace that with what we already decided is going to be our cake. Okay, so now we're going to repeat 3 times, bake a lemon cake and ice the cake, then assemble the 3 layers into one cake and put it in a box. So let's actually try this. I'm going to make a virtual cake here. So here we go. Make the cake. We're going to repeat 3 times. Bake a lemon cake, ice the cake. Bake a lemon cake, ice the cake, bake a lemon cake, ice the cake. Then we're going to assemble 3 layers into one cake. And then we're going to put it in a box. Whoop. And I think we should close the lid. And there you go. We made a cake. Did you know it was that easy? If only actual cooking directions or recipes were this easy. But anyway, as I said before, this could really work for any number of tiers and any flavor cake. So let's say instead of 3 layers and a lemon flavoring, let's say we wanted, well, we'll get there. Sorry, I got my slides out of order. First thing we're going to do is just go over some vocab. So if you have your unit map, just kidding, this is the first lesson of the unit. Go ahead on some paper that you will keep in your computer science binder or folder. Let's write down this idea. So we have parameter, which is a variable in a function definition. It is used as a placeholder for values that will be passed through the function. So you can see here tiers and flavor acted as our parameters. The values that actually go into the parameter are called the argument. So 3 and lemon were our arguments this time, what we actually pass into those variables that we call parameters. Okay? So there goes the 3, there goes the lemon. Here we go. What if I wanted a 4-layer chocolate cake? What would that look like? So we would just replace tiers with 4 now and flavor with chocolate, and we would follow all the same directions. And this is what we would end up with, a 4-layer chocolate cake that technically would go inside of a box. All right? So now you are going to create your own function with parameters. So I want you to go back to the PowerPoint, go to the next slide, complete challenge number 1, then come back here and watch the rest of the video. All right, so let's look at another function, this time one that calculates the cost of making a cake. Let's say this is a new envelope. It says cost cake, that's the name of this function. And once again, we have tiers and flavor as our parameters. So just like before, we could say tiers could be 3, lemon could be the flavor. Those would be our arguments. Tiers and flavor would be our parameters. If we flip this envelope over and look at the actual instructions of this function, let's see what's inside. So we have cake cost, tiers, and flavor. That's just, the name of the function again. We have 2 local variables. Remember, local variables will only work inside of this function. Flavor, cost, and total won't exist outside of this function. Then we have a series of if statements, and that will determine the value of flavor cost based on the argument passed through the flavor parameter. So if the flavor is chocolate, the flavor cost is going to become the value 5. If the flavor is lemon, it's going to cost 4. If the flavor is vanilla, the cost is 3. I really like vanilla, so it works out well for me that it is the cheapest. Then we see that total equals flavor cost multiplied by tiers. That calculates the total using flavor cost and the argument passed through the tiers parameter. And then we have this thing that says return total. We'll come back to what that means. You don't have to understand that yet, but let's see what happens when we pass the arguments 3 and lemon through the tiers and flavor parameters. So think this through. After running this, what does flavor cost equal? What does total equal? Well, let's see. The flavor is lemon. So if lemon equals lemon, so the second one is true. So flavor cost is going to equal 4. And then the total is going to be flavor cost of 4 multiplied by tiers, 3. So 4 times 3, so it should equal 12, right? So we have 4, the total is 12. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And now we're going to investigate that last line where it said return total. Question is, what does it mean to return total? A return does 2 things. It stops the flow of the function. If a return is inside of a conditional, if that condition is met, the function ends there. And return returns a value to the place where the function was called. All right, so I will show you exactly what that means. If we have called the cake cost function and it has returned the value 12, it could be stored in a variable like a baggie, like we've seen in the past. Function return value can be stored in a variable. Just like this, it would become the number 12. Here's how this would look in JavaScript. If we called a function with parameters and it returned the value 12, we could do it like this. We could create a variable called cake calculator. That's not the name of our function. That's a new variable like this baggie up here. We could set it equal to, and you can actually call the function inside of a line. So until now, we've always called functions on their own, and there's just been empty parentheses after them, right? You might remember update screen, parenthesis, parenthesis, semicolon. Now we can call a function in the middle of a line, and we put things inside of the parentheses to act as the arguments that are being passed to the parameters. So cake cost parentheses 3 comma lemon is going to return the value 12, which means this line just becomes variable cake calculator equals 12. So after this expression is evaluated, cake calculator stores the value 12. We could also print something to the console without even using a variable, like this. You could do console.log, quotes, cake cost, colon, quote, plus cake cost parenthesis 3 comma lemon. So now we're actually, in place of where we would normally write the name of a variable, you can actually stick the function directly in here. And this is what the output would look like in the console. It would say cake cost colon space. That's all coming from this quotes. And then this whole thing would evaluate to the number 12. All right. So that is it. That is everything you need to learn. So now it is time for challenge number 2. You're going to create your own cost calculator function for building the house that you created a function for earlier. So go ahead and try that. And that's the end of the video. So once you finish challenge number 2, you are done for the day. Just make sure that you submit the PowerPoint. Thank you very much for watching.